Hello, San Angelo. We changed things up a little bit today as Tom Thompson came in and was interviewed by Joe Hyde, and it's Joe Hyde special.
Who's surprised?
Right, so we'll get through some headlines first, then get into Thompson's interview, and then finish up with weather. I'm James Bellini.
And I'm Tessa Koskovich.
We'll get into those stories right after this message from Jim Bass.
Save big on new and used cars and trucks at BassBunch.com.
When anyone needs a new car or truck, where do they go?
That's easy, BassBunch.com.
What? It's BassBunch.com.
Everybody knows BassBunch.com.
BassBunch.com. Did I hear right?
There is only one place, BassBunch.com.
If you want to save a bunch of money, the only place to shop is BassBunch.com.
In news, Sabrina and Dusty Padilla have been indicted by a Tom Green County grand jury for the continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14 years old. Patrol officers were called to Kentquick on North Bryant Boulevard, where they were told by the child victim that Dusty and Sabrina had abused her over the last few years. The two have been held in the Tom Green County Jail since their arrest on January 24th, 2025.
In business news, Napoli's has closed their doors. A note on the front door simply says closed. All of San Angelo Live's phone calls were unsuccessful to speak with anyone at Napoli's, but we do know they tried to convert from an Italian restaurant to a steakhouse. Maybe Longhorn scared them off.
Maybe. I mean, Longhorn was in the talks for a long time. Now they're finally coming.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we need to...
Longhorn's a pretty big name, so...
They are a big name. And you've also got Western Sky out there. And
right. I meant like Longhorn's not family-owned, so they have nothing to be afraid of.
No, they're a chain, so if they're coming, they know that San Angelo can support a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
At the courthouse, Jeffery Nicholas is in court for a competency hearing. Nicholas is accused of killing 2 Concho County deputies in 2021 and has been held in the Tom Green County Jail on $6 million bond since. According to reports, Nicholas was uncooperative with Stephen Jones and Samuel Leonard, who were on his property about a pack of dogs terrorizing the neighborhood. He told the deputies to get off his property before opening fire, killing them, and allegedly killing them. And an Eden City employee was also shot, but he survived. This is a developing story at the moment, and more will be posted when information becomes available.
Before we get into Tom Thompson's interview, let's hear a word from Carpet Tech.
My name is Cade Simmons. I'm the site manager here in San Angelo. What matters to our customers, I believe, is what we say is CT quality, CT experience, just making sure their needs are met, taking care of their home like it was ours. You just have to keep thinking of, it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. So just making sure you're taking care of what needs to be taken care of, and just knowing that they can rely on us, I think, matters to them a lot.
Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Joe Hyde, the publisher of San Angelo Live. I'm with San Angelo mayoral candidate Tom Thompson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Glad to be here.
So, Tom, before we get into this, who are you and where'd you go to school? And just give me the 30-second, background
30-second history of Tom.
Yeah.
So I grew up in Big Spring, Texas. I went to a small school outside of Big Spring called Forest High School. In '85, I came to ASU and fell in love with Angelo in 1985. Got me a BBA in '85. Graduated in '89. Took a little tour around. Lived in Odessa, Big Spring, and Lubbock for a couple of years. Took me a while to get back to Angelo, about 3 years, but I came back here, and I've been back here ever since. I've worked for the Stock Show and Rodeo, worked for some animal health pharmaceutical companies, and in 2017, I went on the council for Single Member District 2, which is about 29th Street North, which includes the Coliseum, Kirby Park, and some areas north of the Loop as you go south of the soccer fields we call Brentwood.
Well, we just got through with the rodeo, and you have a lot of experience with the rodeo. Certainly, we've worked with you back when you were the rodeo marketing guy. I don't know.
Right. They call that marketing and production guy. Yes, sir.
Marketing production guy. Tell me about the rodeo. How has it grown since you started? I assume you started back in the early 2000s?
I started 2010.
2010?
2010.
So when you started in 2010, where was the rodeo at? And then just kind of talk about the progression of it till today.
I didn't know we were going to go here, but I love that. I love to tell that story. In 2010, we came on, and let's say we had a pie of sponsorship money. So you live and survive on the stock show. Brings people to town, but the association really doesn't gain a lot. You pay entry fees and all the back of the stock show. Where you generate your revenue is off of the rodeo and the carnival. And the rodeo, we had trouble. We originally started out, I think back then we only had 6 performances. And then we worked up to 8, then we worked up to 10, and now we're up to 13. You know, and it has just grown into one of these huge things that everybody wants to go see. There was a point in time, you know, I didn't have enough tickets, didn't have enough $50 tickets to go. I had lots of $10 tickets, but there are people that wanted box seats and sponsors. And what a lot of people don't understand is when you have a nonprofit and people say, here's this amount of money, somebody's going to have to give something up. You can't turn down money for a nonprofit. So what we saw was a lot of commercial investment and expenditures in there just because of the exposure. The San Angelo Stock Show and Rodeo was the largest economic event west of I-35 in Texas. To the best I can tell, if you combine the 3 weeks of what it does in that 3-week period, it does more revenue and economic impact than anything west of I-35.
But stop right there. In 2010, you only had 6 performances.
I think it was something.
But it was certainly less than 13.
Yes, it was way less than 13. And so you'd have certain rules to expand it to go. And then we went to a back-to-back perf-to-perf format, which is.
When you say perf, that means performance.
Performance, right.
Rodeo lingo.
Yeah, but you would get 2 runs and you'd go back-to-back in performances, consecutive performances. Mm-hmm. So you'd come in and make 2 runs. Then if you did good on your 2, you would come back for the short go. But it grew. We added the cent shootout. That's when it really, really drove. Is we wanted to do something that featured an individual format, and it was not sanctioned by the Professional Rodeo Cowboys Association. So we had to do a little tap dance, but we originally crowned the first cent shootout, and the PRCA at that point in time was not happy we did that, but it created a whole new format for rodeo. It was You compete with 8, the top 4 come back, then you crown a champion. It was very easy to follow in one perf. It wasn't, you're keeping track of a contestant's run.
Joe Bob.
Yeah, Joe Bob was a 7 here, and then he was an 8 here. And then 3 weeks later, you don't know if Joe Bob's coming back or not. You didn't get to decide a nightly winner. Right. And that's always been an inherent problem with rodeo is if you go on these average things, you don't realize what's going to happen. But the cent shootout, it totally changed that.
So it's everything is in one show. So
it is
you have all these narratives that kind of can
there's
go.
A sunrise and a sunset in about 3 hours.
Yeah.
And everybody, when they leave, everybody knows. And it was go get the best of the livestock. Go pick the best of the Cowboys. Bring them to town. When that started in San Angelo, tickets the demand for tickets just went through the roof. Mm-hmm. And they were like, well, if I can't get this one, then I want the Saturdays. The Saturdays sell out, then the Fridays sell out, then the matinees sell out. So this whole thing snowballed into 5,000 seats. You know, used to we try to go do a group buy, try to sell 300 seats, 400 seats here to a different group to get them to fill up. And it just grew to where we couldn't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. Right now, as you've heard, because of the season tickets and sponsor investment into it, we're out of seats, all right, that people buy up front. Do they make it every performance? No, they don't. I hear a lot of people say, well, I look up in the stands and I see a row of seats. Well, typically a sponsor forgot to give those to his customer or something.
Or no one there at the sponsorship could
absolutely
use them.
Right. Or they couldn't go that night. But when you have 80,000 IP addresses, people trying to buy that many, it's come to the point of what do you do next? There's other towns that would love to have our rodeo.
Obviously, with the growth, and there's the argument for economic development.
Right.
And you said it's the biggest economic event west of I-35.
Economic impact event west of I-35.
So explain to like the guy that lives on Canyon Creek that has to be a voter,
right,
what the economic impact of the rodeo is to that guy who probably maybe he couldn't get the tickets or he doesn't go.
Right.
So let the guy that lives on Canyon Creek understand what's going on.
Right. So people come to town. So I'll use the stock show. So what people don't understand is the Coliseum, all that property belongs to the city of San Angelo. It belongs to the citizens. Citizens always will. The Stock Show and Rodeo Association manages all of it except the Coliseum. All right, and they've had that. They're fiscally responsible for it. They pay for it.
So the Spur Arena and all the barns around it, the
right.
Stock Show and Rodeo.
Stock Show pays for all the maintenance, all the M&O and all that. Mm-hmm. They also pay for half of major repairs to the Coliseum, although they only use it once a month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
once a year.
They use it once a year for 1 month. They are still on the hook for boilers, HVAC, any major things that happen to have the Coliseum, because that's just part of the contract that the city negotiated is we think the majority of the use, 50% of the use is because of the rodeo.
Well, it is true. It is true. You hear current Mayor Brenda Gunner say, the city makes $150,000 in revenue off the Coliseum other than the rodeo. That's it.
Oh, it's so they would, as from somebody that sat there and looked at that, the city would love for somebody else to take the Coliseum, mm-hmm. but it's 60-something years old. All right, you don't want to get something that's bad, and you have to invest all your money in. And so that kind of led to what we need to do to grow it. And the people that come to town.
Before we even talk about the Coliseum, I want to know what the guy on Canyon Creek thinks.
So I'm going back to that. So economic impact.
Oh, we're talking the weave.
We're talking the weave. So as we've set up the story there, we're coming back full circles. The guy on Canyon Creek doesn't see the people that come into town for the rodeo. The nights, the hotel nights, the rooms, the restaurants, the money they spend to stay here 2, 3, 4 days in a row. All that goes to, I call that commercial business. And it comes in here. That's economic impact. It brings it in here to town. And because of the economic impact, the sales tax the city gets off of these things, it lowers what you have to demand from property tax. I mean, it's a huge revenue.
So there's two primary sources for municipal, county, school district.
Yes.
Oh, well, not school district, just municipal governments and counties is property tax revenue.
Absolutely.
And sales tax revenue.
Yes.
And what we're seeing right now in municipalities across Texas is that our public safety, which used to be taken care of with property taxes, now is starting to cut into the sales tax, which is kind of
it takes $11 million. So our property tax is $48 million, and you have to take $11 million of our sales tax dollars to actually cover public safety.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's the reason why the city exists, right?
Absolutely.
Police and fire.
It's public safety. And I don't care what anybody says. Your number one priority as a mayor, as city council, is public safety.
All right. So one of the things you said about the economic impact of the rodeo is sales tax, a spike in sales tax revenue.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have you seen it? I mean, I haven't looked at a chart. I can go look at it, but
so we don't get that data until 2 months after that. But no, if you go look at any chart, when you actually get the data that comes in 2 months later, 60 days post, you'll see those spikes. All right. Hotels, when the stock show and the rodeo were together, you saw a huge spike.
Right.
But we also had to run. There's a lot of people that couldn't come here just because of the availability of rooms.
Right.
When COVID happened, we actually split, trying to drag the rodeo out till we got to go where we had 100% capacity. I was not there that time, but I remember talking to Justin. I said, you might get an opening to where you can go 100%. What was funny was a lot of the commercial people, the restaurants and hoteliers in town were like, we like it split. I don't have to turn people away. I can sit everybody I need in February, March, and then I can sit everybody I need to in April. I make more money over the long term if these two events are split. And it's actually easier on the staff. A lot of the A team is in the stock show group, and I couldn't use them when I was at the rodeo because they were over there putting on stock show. Now you keep those separate. You can put both your A teams in both spots. It's a very good concentration and efficiency model that has worked good for San Angelo.
Right. So the splitting part, it also helps, I guess, with the rodeo world because you're not directly competing with San Antonio, Houston, and Fort Worth.
So there's a circuit and a mix and a calendar. And if you look at that calendar, different rodeos, different times, San Angelo fits in a specific spot. Other rodeos in big towns will not have their rodeo if it's not on spring break. Houston, Austin, they can't survive if they don't have spring break for people to go to their carnivals.
Right.
They don't fill their seats like we do.
Because they don't have the diehard fans.
No, they don't have.
They're going there to see Garth Brooks.
They are, and so if you watch some of those rodeos, I don't want to throw any mud at them, but those seats will be empty.
Right.
And as you get to the
it's
barrel racing and the bull riding,
Energy Reliant, whatever stadium in Houston is huge. You know.
Exactly, and they don't fill up until the very end. So you have to go. Okay, are you a concert or are you a rodeo? San Angelo has always been 100% rodeo.
And you can't even do a concert here. We've tried that in the past.
Yeah, well, we can't. So kind of the thought. A lot of people said, well, hey, do a concert in the rodeo. Well, then the price of that ticket for that night would have to be triple of what it is because there's no way to exhaust everybody out of the Coliseum and then bring them back in for the concert.
Right.
And then would you charge extra tickets? Who would get the right to their box seats? Who has their season tickets? It would be very difficult to do that. I don't think you could pull it off.
So primarily the sales tax is the indicator for the guy on Canyon Creek.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that reduces a little bit of the pressure for property tax increases.
Absolutely.
Right? So what else does the rodeo bring to San Angelo besides economic development?
I could wander down this for...
Let's not weave too far, but I mean, there's an identity thing here too.
Sure.
Right?
I mean, the rodeos put San Angelo on the map. I mean, from coast to coast, when you say you're from San Angelo, usually the most recognized thing is y'all have got a real good rodeo. And that's from a certain group, but it's an identity of West Texas. And it's something that we have here. And It's known. I mean, in the rodeo industry from coast to coast, it's San Angelo. We have an identity for being kind of the gem of the Southwest. People come here and go, I had no idea you had this here. And we're like, yes, we do. It's awesome.
Yeah. One of the candidates for city council, I won't mention his name because I don't want to get you in a situation where it sounds like you're endorsing anyone, but he said if a business brought in, I think, $37 million a year in economic impact or whatever.
Right.
How much would we spend in Coast of DC money to try to keep them there?
Well, so we had some people came in and talked to us, and they said a ratio of what you need to get is you need to have a return of 20 to 1 to actually justify an economic development investment. To get that rodeo here, if we didn't have it, you couldn't afford it. You'd have to pay several millions of dollars just to try to bring something like that here. Our economic development fund is nowhere near that. I mean, you would have to have private funds. You would have to have tons of. There are other people that have more dollars to spend than Angelo. Abilene has that. Odessa hosts that. Lubbock has that. They're all very jealous of the rodeo. They would all love to see us playing out and not do anything else, and put the rodeo on top of ours and see if they can.
Or start a competing rodeo.
Well, that's exactly where I'm going with that. They could put it right on top of ours and have a competing rodeo. And you know what? Then contestants would have to say, okay, do I go to this one? Or do I go to that one? If I can't go, here's where I go. So there is an inherent risk, as if you're not growing, you're not showing the investment and the future commitment to it.
The people that are in charge of the rodeo, like Justin Jonas and Josh Hilton,
right?
Your rodeo board,
right?
I've been very impressed with Justin Jonas. I think he's a good leader, and I think he's taking something that, I mean, if you think of the history of him, he's taking something that was in debt and negative cash flowing, and he fixed it.
So I've had more arguments and good meetings with Justin, I think, than anybody in town. I worked with him for 10 years. We are friends, and we're also business associates. But they hired him based on his potential. All right.
He hadn't done anything. He was young.
No, he was young and said, okay, here's what it is. And we have this that's grown big enough it now needs staff. It was used to be all done by volunteers. Justin took that, and I've heard his story the first time he looked at the P&L on it. It's like, we're in the red. How do we even go forward? Well, we go borrow a little bit of money, and then hopefully by the end of the rodeo, we got enough to get here. And Justin, what the association does is they pick good teams. All right. And you learn that when you work there. If you put the smartest people in the room and you build the best team, that team will develop a success story. And they did with the rodeo. They hired the right people, and it's a relay race. You've heard me say that before. You take the baton from one and you go the next one, and you hope that next lap around the track brings in X amount of running. I will say from when I started with the rodeo to when I left, the sponsor revenue had almost tripled. All right. Solely because of me. I'd love to say so, but that's not accurate. It was because of what everybody did, and 1,000 volunteers worked to make that thing so great. I always said the true cost of volunteer in San Angelo you can't measure, because they love the rodeo so much, they're willing not to watch it so you can. I mean, they're back here working behind the scenes.
And you can't volunteer. If you're a brand new guy, you just moving to San Angelo this year, it's hard to get on the volunteer list.
Well, it is. You don't want to put somebody back there that doesn't understand livestock, or they don't understand people. What's great is there's a group that works the outside the wine tent. There's also the ticketing group that, to me, I'm most proud of them, because we used to stand in line for 15 minutes getting to the rodeo. Now it's less than 30 seconds. All right. When you come to the rodeo, there's 6 people at the front, and there's probably 4 people at the back. You don't stand in line. You come in, you walk in, you go straight up to your stands.
Right. All right, we've talked a lot about the rodeo, and this thing is on the $42.6 million bonds on the same ballot as the mayor thing.
41.6.
41.6. And so whether or not you choose to do it or not, it's not really up to the next mayor.
Right.
Really. I mean, it's going to be over and done when you get there. But you do get criticized for it. So what do you say, like when Trinidad Aguirre comes out and with a reel on Facebook and says that you're all for the box seats and the suites?
Well, that was taken way out of context, and whoever did his video editing took that. But you have an inventory of seats, and what I was talking about in that statement was when you add the skyboxes and the suites, you take all of those seats we have, you move all the sponsors and all those executive pays up to that level, those people that want that type of executive treatment, you're going to open up 3,000 seats. All right. And they just didn't understand that people want that. They want to sit in a suite. They want something that's personal for their company. They do that. They never got the fact that this is going to open thousands of seats for people to come to the rodeo.
Right.
They just missed it.
And I think people don't understand how sporting events work. Or they think in San Angelo it doesn't apply, but we got to build a $1.2 billion Jerry's World in Arlington, right? The whole reason they built that was for suites.
Yes.
I mean, so they could pay for the stuff.
Right. And there's people here there's businesses, commercial investment here that wants something like that. Bring their customers in. They bring this. They want to use this as their one time of the year. They save all their marketings for this one time of the year marketing funds. And it's great to let them have that, but that also opens up all of these seats. It creates all this. There's not a scarcity on tickets anymore. Mm-hmm. And when you double the size.
You better not say that, because there might be, because the demand for the rodeo might increase that much more.
You know what? We can cross our fingers, but I would probably argue with Justin and Josh on this. I think when you have 10,000 seats, you're going to see the price of your general admission seats come down. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true, but when you're trying to fill 10,000 seats instead of 5,000, it's now going to be you're going to be able to do group sales. There's going to be churches, schools, groups. San Angelo Live wants to take 100 people, 100 customers. You're going to be able to say, I want to do a group sale and I want to get 100 seats.
Gotcha. All right, let's quit beating the dead horse of the rodeo.
Right. So, I want to go on that. A lot of people have talked about timing. That's several people have picked
You mean why do they have the dang Coliseum bond at the same time as this huge school district bond?
Absolutely, and I get that. Prior to this election, the school had a bond at that one. Mm-hmm. All right. Then there's these. We had heard. We didn't know if the school was coming out with one bond too. Mm-hmm. We didn't know for sure because they hadn't publicly announced that. Other than that, hey, we're coming with a bond. The difference between the two, as we decided that day at council, we don't even think the two relate. I mean, the cost of the school bond is significantly different than the cost of the rodeo bond. But the rodeo bond, it's about a home. All right. It's a building that. They just want something over the head. There's parts of it. If you're comfortable standing in line for 20 minutes to go to the bathroom, if you are comfortable that there's no handrails or the seats, I mean, then you don't have a decision.
Stands.
Yeah, makeshift concession stands, all this. Then you're probably not going to worry about it. But I brought up to people, if you wanted to buy one or two more tickets for the rodeo, would you? If you had two more performances, yes. Well, that'd be the same cost, if not cheaper, than expanding the Coliseum and doing the renovation project and making it something that it's not only about rodeo. You could make that about concerts. You could make that about entertainment. There's so many people that could now use a fully functional. You've done some promotions on concerts to build a plug-and-play facility. Mm-hmm. I think the revenue that would come back to the city off that, just off the seat fee alone, would probably quadruple what they're getting now.
Right. If the city still manages the Coliseum.
Right, and they're not going to. According to, if this bond goes through, the association's already put in $1.5 million at risk. Mm-hmm. Okay,
they got the plans and all that kind of stuff.
They paid for the engineering, the plans. They actually brought in the engineer again to look at maybe some specs to do some emergency shelter things, which I don't know how that's going to turn out. That significantly increases the cost. But they've looked at ways of minimizing that. They just couldn't privately fundraise it. Everybody said, well, just go make somebody else do this through economic development.
Someone who has got a lot of oil wells in Reagan County.
Oh, absolutely. Well, they can't. I mean, you can't find that amount. I think they found 7, 8, 9 million of people that would said maybe we could. But when you looked at something that would only cost $41 million now, but if you started from scratch on the Coliseum, it'd be $200 to $250 million.
A brand new Coliseum.
Brand new Coliseum, and to do something with only 40, to give it I call it a sunset of at least a 50-year date stamp on it. You got another 50 years out of it. Why would you not pass that up for
1958, and then the first rodeo was in 1959.
Yep.
In that Coliseum.
Oh, absolutely. So, I'm passionate about it because I've seen what it does. I see people that love, people come here for family reunions. They bring all their kids in. I work the front door all the time and take tickets.
So you see the demographics.
That is the coolest job to have because you're interacting with people. You see people have been coming here for 20 years, 30 years. There's people on their walkers and go, if this goes, I want an elevator, and you've got 62 handicap seats. If the bond
goes, I want an elevator.
Yes, well, there's going to be 4, and I'm like, okay, you've got it. You live outside of town, you can't vote, but no, we'd love to accommodate you.
All right, so this is all part of a big economic development thing.
Sure.
I have one of my mentors doesn't live here. He lives in San Antonio, and he came here a couple years ago, and we're driving through downtown San Angelo. And I said, why don't you buy some of these buildings? Let's fix them up. Let's do, because he's got, cash to do that. And he's investing in all these other cities, And I was like, why don't you come to San Angelo? He goes, this place doesn't have any water. I wouldn't put a dime in this place. And that really just hit home right there. You hear people, it's almost like it's a left-wing cause, like, oh, conserve your water and water. You hear all that. But you get down to brass tacks, it's all about the water availability.
Absolutely.
So tell me your vision on the water part.
So I love water because water's special and water's precious. We have two non-adjacent water supplies. Okay, we have the Ford Ranch Hickory Aquifer, and then we've got Lake Ivy. Mm-hmm. So the Ford Ranch Aquifer is not as susceptible to drought as Lake Ivy is, and then Lake Ivy we share with two other cities. So there's kind of a concern about that, especially when you get in drought. The consumption, everybody goes, oh, it's going to use. No, we think it uses quite a bit. Then we started a reclamation project with the Concho River. Mm-hmm. So, and it will be able to do about 12 million gallons.
And the reclamation thing is you're treating sewage water up to a certain point, dumping it in there, and letting the natural meandering of the course of the river clean that water.
Absolutely. And several other cities and towns in Texas have done this and found you try to get to a net zero. This mm-hmm. will, by itself alone, will do about 12 million gallons a day, which is our average mm-hmm. over the years, about 12 million. So that gets your water consumption reuse on reclamation to a net zero. Mm-hmm. All right. In hot days, in the peak of the summer, we'll use 18 million gallons a day. You've got the aquifer that's pushing about 12 million, and now we're fully permitted to take everything out, and we have the capacity to process it. It's a great balance of water, and you have to protect that. There's people in Austin that are trying to take the rights to water all over Texas and have it be decided by somebody in Austin, Texas. Right. And if they call up and say, you need to open your gates and you need to run with it, I've learned that you have to just be in the middle of it all the time. You have to fight. You support, Drew on efforts and
Drew Darby, who's the state
absolutely.
rep.
You support Drew Darby, the state rep, and go, okay, what can we do to protect our water? And number one question on a business or manufacturing is, what is your water? What is your housing? What do your schools look like? Mm-hmm. In that order, those are the first three questions they ask. And that some people don't have a clue how precious the water is, and you have to protect it.
Have you looked at how competitive we are in the water question to other comparable cities like Wichita Falls or even a suburb of Austin? I mean, you would think a suburb of Austin, San Antonio, the Edwards aquifer there. I mean, is that thing going to go dry? I mean, that's the question,
So there's a fight down there, and I will just say we don't want to be in part of that fight, but there's a huge battle over water now down that whole I-35 and I-45 corridor. Mm-hmm. They are building and growing at such a rate that they are way beyond their capacity of their water. I think, we want to have at least a minimum of 2050. We want to be 2070 mm-hmm. is what we have a supply to handle. Right. Boy, East Texas, it's all about the water. I mean, you can have a well, but if everybody has a straw into your bucket, mm-hmm. and it's all in your aquifer, you just hit it. That Edwards Trinity aquifer down there has so many straws in it, they're going to go somewhere else to try to find something. And that's key for us is we have to protect what we have. Right.
Okay. So we spend 72% of our economic development half-cent sales tax mm-hmm. on water development projects. Right. Which primarily is that money is being used to finance large, $100 million projects like the Hickory Aquifer is $110 million. Right. I'm sure we're still paying on it, right? Right. So that money's already kind of spoken for. And that puts our economic development at a disadvantage because the half-cent sales tax in Abilene, they don't have that water mandate.
Burden, right.
Right? So they have $20 million to spend while we have $4 million. Right, because we're pulling in, I don't know, 12 million. Most of it's going to water.
So we had the half-cent sales tax, and then Alvin knew to keep it going, you had to earmark it for something. Right. The cleanest thing for us, the most important thing for somebody in West Texas, is to earmark it for water. Mm-hmm. So water pays the underground. The water fund gets the underground on all the streets we've done. Like Bell Street, I think was 22 million. I think more than half of that was just the underground. Right. All right. It wasn't the surface. So that was earmarked for that. So you're right. 72% of that is earmarked for water. 28% what goes to economic development. Is that enough? It's been one of the hot buttons that everybody's talked about, mm-hmm. and we need to look at it and go, you know what?
Well, it's a hot button. Here's why it's a hot button. And County Judge Lane Carter kind of encapsulated it for me. He said, we have, we're talking about the bonds. We're mm-hmm. talking about the Coliseum bond and this huge $400 million school district bond. And he said, The county's got needs too. I mean, they're looking at
absolutely.
They need to do a criminal justice center downtown somewhere.
Absolutely.
They have courtroom security issues, things like that. We haven't even talked to them
No, and
about
those
it.
things are going to come down to them as a mandate. I mean, it's not going to be an option. There's going to be some mandates that they're going to have to take.
So all these bonds, and you compare it to Lubbock. Lubbock ISD has a $300 million bond, and there's no tax increase accompanied with it because Lubbock is growing. San Angelo is not growing like Lubbock is, and some people say that's a good thing, but it's not growing. So on your tax base, which is I think today is what, 11 billion now of property that we tax. If your tax base grows, you're not restricted on that money. You could do a lot of stuff with it, right?
Absolutely.
And our tax base is just not growing. Part of the problem, I think, is one of our biggest employers in town don't pay taxes. Shannon, ASU, Goodfellow, and now Ethicon, because they make PPE.
Yeah, they got through on that last election, and there were some people that said makers of specific types of medical instruments will be exempt,
right?
Be non-taxable. And I was like, why did that even get brought up? Why did that? And I have no idea, but some lobbyist somewhere got it through. And when they took that tax roll, I think it dinged the city $800,000 just alone.
Well,
in revenue.
It's $227 million to the county.
Yes.
In valuation.
Yeah, you're right. I was looking at the tax value paid, because I remember when it came
across. Which is $500,000 for the county, $800,000 for the city.
So we had to absorb that within our budget.
And that's a penny. That's a penny tax increase right there.
Yes.
Right.
But the city had to absorb that and stay within our budget, because you bake your budget and you cook it and it's done. So you make it October 1 to September 30th. When you hear that it comes through, you're like going, how do we make that up? Where do we go? Well, we're very, I call it fiscally responsible, and we're very conservative in our budgeting, and we were able to absorb that. It hurt. I mean, there were some projects that we had planned that you can't bring those up. You can't.
Like what?
Money running quarterback.
What did the city deny itself? I have a hard time thinking the big government entity like the city would deny itself.
Well, there was some, I was fixing to say, there's some equipment that the police department wanted. There's some things, fire department needs a couple new stations, not only just one.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But you look for grant money, and you look for the Council of Governments that does great helping us with grant money. John Austin Stokes helps us find that money to pay for fire stations. We're working on that now. Part of the things at the shelter, you can contribute back to that. We didn't have the money. We had to.
You mean the animal shelter?
The animal shelter. You had to take a big hickey on money, and you only have what you have.
Right.
You can't. I've heard everybody say, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. I'm like, how do you pay for that? You can. Anthony Wilson, of all the people, Anthony Wilson, who used to be a...
You mean the old guy, Anthony Wilson from Maine?
Anthony.
He moved up there to live with Tucker Carlson, and I know he's going to be watching this. So he used to be the public information officer. If you watch the old Wayne Delfino videos about the trash contract, he's the crickets guy.
But he had one of the best words of wisdom to anybody, and he would tell, he said, you can do anything you can afford to do. And that was one of the most true statements I've ever heard. Whatever you have in your budget, people don't understand a city budget is 100% balanced. It's illegal to have a non-balanced budget. Now, this past year, there's been some ways to do some debt financing, which we've done for the animal shelter. But at the end of the day, your budgets have to match. You can't say, oh, well, we're going to go get more from here. No. When it's done, it's illegal. Your income and your expense have to match. So a lot of people don't understand that. No, there's not a lot of flexibility.
And you can't print any money like the federal government can.
No, you can't print money. And when you're hot tax, and let's say the interest rates are really, affecting housing and things like that. So you look at revenue would come if you add one more house. That's usually about $3,000 in property tax. Interest rates are affecting that. I've talked to several bankers and said, okay, this is a hot topic. What is your answer from somebody that's in that business? I say, interest rates are too high right now. It's such a hard investment. There's no room to have any additional expense on our property. When you start plugging in things that are different and the interest rates takes a couple of points out, then it's really hard to build a house.
Gotcha.
I get it. I'm like, all right, I get it.
And that so we're not growing, and which is probably caused by national and international issues, primarily interest rates.
Right.
Or that's a big contributor. Two things that we need to grow, I think, is affordable housing, right? And we need to have a viable labor force.
Okay.
Right?
So let's start with affordable housing.
Okay.
So is it affordable housing or is it attainable housing?
Well, I think we're going to have to say attainable housing because,
right? Because
it costs $180 a square foot to build something. Right.
And I hear people say, "Oh, my kids had to leave." My son graduated ASU, has an MBA, he has a house, and it's right at the cusp of what he can afford to stay in that house. So if you look at what Angelo has that they can do, the city can do, we have an infill program. We put 200,000
And
into
when you
that.
say infill, that means you have let's say 20 years
There's
ago.
an overlay. There's a map.
A house burned down in this lot. So you have this empty lot that's been there for 25, 30 years.
And it's a whole section.
What do you mean it's a whole section?
Well, there could be several of them in a section. You could maybe put 13, 15 houses.
Yeah,
in
so
one
you have
area.
15 infill. I mean,
Absolutely.
there's a builder, AB Builders, and I think Ryan Newland are doing it up on the north side.
Absolutely.
They're infill. In fact, if you were familiar with the parade of homes that just happened during the rodeo, if you happen to see the parade of homes, there's an infield on Paseo de Vaca by Brian Benson. I think he built 2 of them there. There's 2 empty lots on Paseo de Vaca, that's the most desired street in San Angelo.
It's like the historic street of town.
Yeah, and he built 2, $750,000 homes right there next to each other. So,
well, the ones that have happened in SMD2, they try to hit that price point of, when I first started, it was like they wanted to do, new home wanted to do 135 to 151 to 160. Now, with the price and inflation over the past 10 years, that price point's now a $200,000 home. But if you go to any bank, they'll say, we have 30, 40, 50 people approved from a price point from 250 to 350, nearly up to 400. They can't find a home that they want to live in. And housing is scarce.
When you say that, it's because for $300,000 now that the quality of the home or the neighborhood is not up to par with what people would expect?
That is where they would like to, and comparing that to other cities, we have a scarcity of homes. All right. In my talk when I was talking with the Realtors Association and the home builders is, I don't care what your plan is now. I need you to double that. We need more homes. We need places to put people. Nobody's creating any more property. We're not going to grow anything if we don't make an investment and try to develop more.
Are you familiar with Jim Ned, the high school up in Tuscola?
Oh, yeah.
So there's a joke going around that John James, who was the planning director up in Abilene at the time, and then he came here, that he built Jim Ned, which is the biggest competitor locally to Wall High School, right, for football. And Jim Ned's massive growth was outside the city limits because in the TML, the Texas Municipal League, kind of way to look at city development is to put all these onerous requirements on home builders or on subdivision developers so that they just said, I'm not going to develop in the city. I'm going to move out in the county. And
avoid city taxes.
I
mean, in a nutshell, they were moving out because the burden was less.
But the joke is that John James built Jim Ned, so because he kicked them all out of the city, and then he came here and he kicked them all out of the city. And you hear like our own San Angelo Home Builders Association, they have several complaints, or 2 complaints that I've heard. The first one is if I build a subdivision anticipating that the city will annex that, they want green spaces. I think you got rid of that.
So that one came,
I got one
green
more
space
thing.
was hard.
And the other one was the stormwater. There's liabilities with stormwater that a developer didn't want to accept.
Oh no, you're spot on. And I have had these discussions, and I didn't realize these were such a hot button. But stormwater goes back to detention ponds.
Right.
So do you have a detention pond for your individual area, or do you have a regional one where you can pull 2 or 3 developments into it? We've never solved that. All right. That one's still sitting out there.
Well, we kind of solved it a little bit with the Avenue P problem, right?
Yes. But that was created by some construction that was done at ASU. And
back before we even knew what we were doing. Right. So that was back in the 50s and 60s. They built all these parking lots. And
nowhere for the water to go. And here it comes, and all of a sudden everybody's running up to you going, hey, where are you doing this? And we're like, we weren't here, engineers. I mean, they built things back then that probably weren't spec'd and engineered as far as drainage and flood for the next 50 years.
They didn't care because it was out in the middle. It was probably on the edge of town. But that kind of shows if you don't take care of stormwater, how it can affect your neighbor. Because now we have entire 2 streets down there on Avenue P in the barrio getting flooded out every time it rains because the Red Arroyo naturally wants to go that way.
It does. So I mean, that's part of planning. And Aaron Vanoy has got a hard task now. He's been in his job about a year, and it's like
he's the engineer,
and he's in charge of permits and planning over there, and that's directly under Rick. But it's been a challenge for him. Number one, to keep the right amount of people on staff, and you have to have a very specific, I would say, training and skill set to work in permits and planning. Right? What we've done here recently, I mean, they've heard it's been a hot button every 4 years.
Right.
We're starting to hire inspectors that are versed in not only plumbing but electrical. All right. So they've been given a budget. This is your budget for the year. You can't do anything with that until the next one. But we've sat down and talked about it. Say, do you need 4 more people? Do you need 6 more people? Do you need educated people? And there's always an answer of yes. I know we need that. And if you're going to want me to do this,
of course, it's a city bureaucracy. They want more people.
Well, they will, but what they put in place was they put in a tracking program, and we have a 7-day deadline on private and then 21 on commercial as far as inspections. They actually have a tracking program in there, and I called this morning and said, how are y'all? Well, we have nothing in the red, nothing in the yellow. We are caught up on all that. Which
red
is
and yellow would be late, I guess.
Yes, late for inspections or permit granted. So you can't just go in and get a permit that day and walk out. I mean, you've got to go in, you've got to proof up some things. And the purpose of that is for your protection. Carports were a big issue. People brought that up. And how that originally started, the oversight on that was all the neighbors said, somebody just built the ugliest carport in the world right next to my house. I get it, but could they at least had some construction standards to do? So
they went and bought one off of Amazon.
Well, they did that, or they built one and unfortunately built it with 2 3/8 pipe instead of 2 7/8. All right, or they didn't use square tubing, or they didn't make it, match their house. So there is a purpose in that, and that is protection of you and your neighbors. You buy that not to have something ugly come in next door to you, but there is a bit of a catch to it, and it all boils back down to, if we'd started with this 50, 60, 70 years ago and keeping everybody on the same standard, and it's not a surprise, we could do that. Getting back to the original point was, we would love for development to be in the city limits. I mean, that's more tax, and you want a tax brace.
It's not just tax, but you're making money with the water enterprise funds,
absolutely,
with stormwater, with sewage, with trash. You're making
the normal costs that people do. It's part of what creates revenue for a city, and it helps spread that cost out to where it's not such a big burden on anybody. The more houses you build in time,
but we need. I would think that we need not just infill development, but we need large housing developments to happen. And so we increase the supply.
Absolutely.
And we increase the supply and demand. I mean, I learned that at Texas A&M. I don't know if they taught that at ASU, but
you know what, we did. We sent our instructors down there. But anyway, go ASU.
But yeah, we need to have I guess less friction on the supply side. And so that's what I'm thinking. And it's good that we have organizations like the HBA who can kind of enunciate this stuff and explain.
Well, they're on an advisory board, and they go to the city and say, here it is. So there's always been a big question to me is, what point does a developer take the cost all the way to the next street and beyond versus just coming to the street where he needs it?
Right.
Our water system is not a circular system. We have so many dead ends in our water system that we have to go to the north end of town and open up a fire hydrant just to pull all the disinfectants and things through it. And it's the same thing with how far do you extend that. When you go in, you try to create infill programs that'll help a developer get all the way to the next street. I want you to be able to do 10 houses, get it to there. You don't have to put it here and then pay for it to go here. All right. You get what you need and get it to the corner, and hopefully the city can help you with that.
I would think that it would be in the city's best interest, particularly with economic development. And I don't know if you could even use half-cent sales tax for this, but if you talk to any municipality, I'll give you an example.
But you could use tiers. I'm going to tee you up.
Yeah,
you can use.
We're going to make a tiers. We're going to make a tiers for the Southwest San Angelo.
Well, the original because you have to put in a whole map and that. But the original intent of tiers was originally, what I learned from Michael Dane and some of it is infrastructure.
Well, then why are we spending tiers money on $75,000 grants to rich landowners on Chadbourne Street?
Well, I don't think they're rich landowners.
They're rich. They're richer than the guy on Canyon Creek.
No,
barely afford his house. And now you're telling me I'm going to take his tax dollars and I'm going to spend $75,000 that doesn't pay for half a facade to some rich landowner.
Well, I look at it this way: we put $384,000 in this past turn on tiers funds for north.
Right.
For the north zone.
By the way, tiers is the tax increment reinvestment zone. It covers our very large downtown. Primarily, if you're in the zone, which goes from
there's a map on the website.
Yeah, it goes from Walmart all the way down to Desiree's. How's that? And then from the Bryants, or a little bit past the Bryants, maybe Central High School, all the way to the convention center. That's kind of how it's.
But the businesses in that zone contribute back to that zone. Right. This money goes in there, and that's always been your argument: is
that
if we took that money
and give it back to the city general fund instead of putting it into this tiers.
That's a great argument. I mean, that is. But I think there's some people that have made some growth and targets with that wouldn't do that if that's supportive. It's up to 25%. You can get up to like $75,000 out of it.
Yeah, it's silly.
But you're also going to have to pay back, as you said. You get taxed again on the improvements of your facility. It comes back in. It helps propagate further business. There was so poor usage of it in the North Zone till about 4 or 5 years ago. And it was people had trouble. Somebody walked in from the city and said, number one, I'm from the government and I'm here to help, and here's a way for you to improve
And they didn't
this
trust
building.
you. Yeah.
And there's been some houses, there were some really cool things that are going to start that I don't think would have started without this tiers funding, whether it's $25,000 or $75,000. Those people don't get that money up front. They get it after they've completed the project. They've proofed out what they've done. Once they do that, then they get their check. Do I think there's a sunset on tiers programs? And my wife says I use that too much. I think there's a point. Yeah, I think there's an end to it. But I can't see that any cleaner than 6 or 7 years on.
Well,
the issue has been
go back to Michael Dane. He's assistant city manager.
Assistant city manager.
Pretty smart guy.
Sharp.
And people they complain about the assistant city managers all the time. And Michael Dane always gets the wrath of it. I'm going to tell you something.
He and Rick get the wrath.
Let me tell you about Michael Dane. He sat down with me in 2013 and explained to me how municipal budgets work. And that lesson has stuck with me for 12 years now, and it's helped me understand a lot of the
So I have got that lesson. You get that lesson about once a year, and you sit down, and there's parts of it where it helps you grow and mature in what you understand. And there's so much education. I know everybody likes to beat them up because of the city, but there's a wheelhouse and talent up there that will be very hard to replace. And all of those guys are eligible to retire now. That whole fourth floor is ready to go.
So what are you going to do? You're going to have like if you win this mayor's race, you're going to have a HR problem. And I'm totally moving off of tiers.
No,
so
it's good. I mean, that was kind of our agreement. We talked whatever we want about.
Yeah. So anyway, what are you going to do about the HR problem? I mean, we have like department heads that aren't there. That aren't.
There's over 150 people that are eligible for full retirement. There was a whole group. Now, one thing that we did do that I thought was really grand of council several months ago, we promised lifetime health insurance for employees several years ago. And that has become such a financial tax that it was hard to figure out how to fund that. We think through attrition that rate's finally going to peak and go down. But we made an argument. I mean, arguments made. You told us we were going to have lifetime health, and until they get to Medicaid and the certain.
I remember
we honored it. We honored it.
You had like old police chiefs, and you had old judges coming in and saying, "Hey, y'all promised this."
And you know what? They were right. In the initial part of that, it was, we don't know if we can provide this anymore and stay within our budget. My stance from the word go was, you know what? A handshake's a handshake. Your word's your word. And if we told them 20 years ago we were going to take care of you, we need to find a way to do it. And it was a hard mission to accomplish, but in the end, it was unanimous. We did do that, but
right. Well, you found a way.
Hard.
You found a way to do it cheaper than you thought it would originally cost.
Well, we hope so, but we actually fired that health.
Oh no!
Well, we fired that health advisor that was telling us this is the way to go, because they should have told us about. There was what act came off on there was some funding act that just got unfunded. What the hell was it?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. But
there was a way to do it cheaper than you initially thought.
There was a way to do it cheaper than we initially thought, but that didn't matter. We promised these people what we were going to do. So we had to tighten our belt in others. We have a very good fund budget and fund balance, and we try to keep those 90 days. We reel those in closer and tighter. But the whole purpose of that was, when you have emergency needs like this, you have the funds to go to.
You don't have to go get a bond.
I think that's great financial planning. Some people don't understand that at all. When you put a big reserve in there, you're just preparing. You don't have to spend it. You can do a carryover. You'll see us do carryover votes every year. That's just rolling over to the next year. That's safety.
Okay. So back to tiers.
Gotcha. Okay, so we're on tiers. Let's talk tiers.
If we got rid of tiers, you're going to add to the city budget over $1 million.
Yeah, I think your number is what, $1.4 million, $1.3 million?
Yeah, something like that. And,
right.
And I know the county would be about $650,000.
Right.
Which for the city is about 2 cents on your property tax rate, and on the county it's about a penny and a half.
Right.
Well, actually, a little bit less than a penny, about 3/4 of a penny. But so why not just do that? And now we're not spending all this money on $75,000 facades for rich people who live on Chadbourne Street or own property on Chadbourne Street, and instead we could spend that money on pay raises for firefighters.
Okay, so I see where you're going. Now here, let me put another. So we got the Safer grant. Are you familiar with the Safer Street grant?
No.
It was the $18 million we got a couple years ago. We used some tiers funds to match that. It had to be they were 18.
You're talking about the downtown.
Yes, but that was
Chadbourne Street.
Right.
3 phases.
So there was $18 million.
And you used
right, and we had to use 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the tiers fund subsidized that. All right, it subsidized I think $3.5 million.
Well, could you subsidize it out of the general fund?
Not if you don't have it planned and earmarked for it originally. I mean, but it was great because that went down the tiers zone.
Mm-hmm.
It was down the tiers. I thought it was a brilliant way to subsidize it and finance it.
Right.
And go, here's unused funds that are just sitting there.
I'm okay with that because the expenditure of the tiers money there benefits everyone in the city.
Absolutely.
Right.
But it was North Bryan. I mean, it was the North group, the North tier zone, and there was a lot of criticism of that, but that was an excellent way to use that. Right. A lot of people aren't aware of that, but I thought that was brilliant the way they put that.
Well, you're using special grant money, or not grant money, you're using special, I guess, accounts. The tiers.
Right. Well, everything's in a bucket, and some buckets can't be used.
Yeah.
I mean, they are highly regulated.
But you're using the tiers bucket to benefit everyone. It's just like when you use Coast of DC monies to dredge the Concho River, one of the first projects they did with it. I thought that benefited everyone. Or you used Coast of DC money or half-cent sales tax money to build the Spur Coliseum or Spur Arena.
Spur Arena.
That everyone gets
that
joy out of.
$17 million has turned into what's nearly 70 a year. Just what all of those grounds bring, not just one facility, but all of those grounds bring. It was by far the quickest shot in the arm you could do.
My problem with tiers is the individual grants because those don't benefit. I mean, all right, I'm gonna get a new facade for the Dead Horse. I mean, come on. I mean, that's just benefiting the Dead Horse owners.
Well, it has to go through a board, and they have to approve it.
I know.
If you bring something, no, they've turned down stuff that was like, no, you're just trying to get free money.
Well,
you're not really going to make an improvement on it because we're going to tax you on it.
The most iconic thing for San Angelo is the Cactus Hotel sign,
right?
And they turned it down because Lee Pfluger's rich. I mean, that's basically what it was.
Lee has taken a beating over all of those things, and I think tiers funds should come up there, and you should cover up the name. All right, you should know who the owner is. Here's the project. It's for this improvement. It's for this type. It's for exterior. It's for things. Lee has an issue with even getting a crane in to work on that. I mean, if you just want to do the scaffolding alone, and this is from Lee, just the scaffolding alone to set up to redo a lot of the Cactus Hotel is nearly $1 million. Tiers funds won't touch the tiny bit of that, but it's an argument.
But he applied for $75,000 and was turned down for to fix the roof of the Cactus,
right?
Which is an iconic building. You don't see a 2-story building on Concho Avenue. You see the Cactus Hotel. It's the tallest building in downtown. It's the most and we can't use tiers money to do something to fix it up.
I think there was an argument on how that was going to be used and how it's balanced, and I'm not quite for sure that was. And you may be much better versed on that specific item. I don't think it ever addressed the letters, the H and that on the top of it as far as tiers funds.
Right.
There's a question because some of that area is nonprofit, which throws up another argument is we can't ever give money to or let me put it this way. In the South Zone, you can't give money to nonprofits.
Right.
In the North Zone, it is allowed. So I think there was a lot more to that conversation than what we're getting here. But I see your point is you turn some people down. But it goes in front of a board of people that are very intelligent. They got their first tiers meeting today.
That's questionable.
Yeah.
I'm not on the board.
Well, I know Steve Floyd went on there today. Joe Spano went on there today.
His new call sign. He used to be the garbage guy.
Right.
He's now the junk man.
The junk man.
Yeah, junk man.
Anyway, but there's some very smart people that look at that and to make sure that those are still public's funds. All right. I mean, those are still they have to be used in a specific area, but they still belong to the citizens is what they're doing, and they have to be done with specific parameters on it.
If I'm going to war,
yep,
I want to have the ability to schedule my bomb strikes and to move my infantry and my armor around to where the pointy edge of the spear is, where I'm going to pierce the forward edge of the battle area, so to speak. I want to be able to concentrate my forces, right? We have this thing artificially set up, this tiers artificially set up with this northern and southern zone because I'm going to say, we're deep into this podcast, right? I'm going to say we got a lot of butthurt people, and they separated the thing artificially. And so now I have all of my army up here on the north side. I have all the activity on the south side. And I have no way to concentrate my forces to basically maximize what I'm spending with tiers money. Shouldn't we just get rid of the 2 zones and have one big happy family?
That's been a big argument. But the people that generate the money, the north zone comes from the north commercial project. The south comes from the south. If you had a house and you did all the work, all right, and you put everything back into the pile, is it fair for your neighbor to come down here who hasn't maybe put all that money into that zone and pull out of it? To me, that's the argument is each zone, and this goes back to Dwayne Morrison and other people have always said, we're proud of what we have. North Chadbourne is very, I would say, I don't want to say territorial, but we're proud of what we are, and we're proud of what money we help generate. Do we want to see that continually be pulled by somebody in the South Zone that was generated in the North Zone? I get that argument. I think, is there a way you could share the funds, or you don't want money to sit there and not be used? That's why they used it for the SAFER grant. But if there's funds, if there's $1 million or $2 million there, I don't see why you can't send some of that to the South Zone, knowing that you're going to get, each one brings in, I think the North Zone brings in $1.4 million a year, and the South Zone brings in $1.3 a year. If you exhaust this, the better way to actually solve your problem, Joe, would be extend the payout on some of that. There's been some borrowing from the tiers funds. If you extend that and double the payout time, you just double the amount of money that you can hand out to other people. So there's many ways to do it, and the new tiers board is going to get to do that. There's a whole new group that's going to come in and say, all right, here's how we're going to look at tiers. I think it'll be great to look at, say, okay, I understand that, but I get the North Zone's, territorial thought of that's our money that we put in there. We're not asking for the South's money. We didn't come down there when they had tons of budget and ask for it.
Let's just say you had one big tier zone, and we're all in the same family. Right. We live in the same city. All right. The growth on North Chadbourne, when I say North Chadbourne, the growth from Beauregard, which is the east or the north-south divide, going toward the loop, would continue to grow. We just
changed that. It was further north. It was closer up second, third. We pulled it down thinking that's a natural cut. So I'm glad you point that out.
But you would continue to grow all the way up to 14th Street, 19th Street, 29th Street, et cetera. So I guess your growth is doing like this. Your growth is going like this from the center up, as opposed to trying to plant trees up on the north side, or plant sprigs, and they're not taking. You have some exceptions, and you mentioned some in the debate the other day. Franco's, and Western Skies,
absolutely.
So you have some exceptions, but for the most part, it's really difficult to get things going way north Chadbourne when all the development is down there by Beauregard.
I'll argue that. I'll say, look at the north side commercially, what it has done. And you know where I'm going with this. You've got a Kent Quick, you've got a Huddle House, you've got a Tractor Supply, you've
That's
got
on Bryant.
Deals. Yeah. Well, point of it is, it's all the north side. Those are all still in the north zones. You can't say it's just the north zone on Chadbourne Street.
Are you going to give Huddle House a $75,000 grant to update its facade?
Nothing they would do would qualify. The board would look at that and go, no, you can't do that. The board would go, no, that one's on your own. But you look at that and you try to revitalize things that are not there. That's the whole point of tiers, is to revitalize things that can move forward and stay sustainable. I have an issue with people trying to take tiers money to put lipstick on something that it's not going to last a year or two. I have a huge issue with that, and giving that money away and going, that's not a good long term. That might be a good short term goal for you, but that's not a long term objective and success story.
Is it part of the purpose of tiers? Is I talked to Lee Pfluger like back in the day when he financed the Angry Cactus. Okay, and I was thinking, why would you spend all this money rehabbing this old Army Navy store that was burned up? Right? It made no sense to me. But then when they finished the project, and you look back in the back and you see that original limestone brick wall, I was like, well, they kept that. But when you talk to Lee, he says it would have been a heck of a lot cheaper to tear this thing down and build a brand new building.
Right.
So we need extra help from these grant programs, tiers, and stuff to be able to.
We have grant writers say, so the majority of the expansion and things that have happened downtown have been grant funds. River Project, there's the majority of that is grant funds. So we have to have enough in reserve to go in there and supplement when they say you've got a match. And Brenda's heart. It has always been downtown. Let's make downtown some of the most important things in the largest successful cities. I was just at Fort Worth. They have a cultural district, the arts.
You're talking about Fort Worth, downtown, 7th Street.
And they have a whole area downtown that helps that thing survive. The most Omaha, same thing. They have a great downtown district that survives. You can't ignore it. We've spent a lot there.
Yeah, but there's a tale of two cities that people should think about when you think about Fort Worth versus Dallas. Downtown Dallas is terrible. There's nothing to do. They got a bunch of monuments to JFK.
They didn't care. They didn't care. You're right. You're absolutely right.
And you don't have a house. They have downtown housing. It's big enough, but it's boring. I'd rather live in downtown Fort Worth.
Oh, I'll take Fort Worth any day. If you look at trying to find something similar to where most of us live here because we love here, and if you looked at somewhere you had to go, to me it was always Fort Worth or Omaha that had a great downtown district. There was commerce. You look at downtown San Angelo has a or a stat they put out over the past 6-7 years, over 700 businesses have come and tried to work into that overlay. I don't know if all of those
The
won.
downtown overlay.
Yeah. Don't know if they've all been winners. But I mean, if you never get off the bench and you never throw, you're never going to have a success story to brag on.
If you compare the downtown San Angelo to say like downtown Lubbock or downtown Abilene, I think we have a more, I don't know, with the Chadbourne and Oaks north-south thing, and then of course you have your super uber commercial Bryant. I think we got a pretty good. It's naturally better than the other cities.
It is,
and it's bigger.
It is.
It's much bigger.
It is. And it's just going to get better. I mean, there's going to be development on the river. I think you're looking at projects that there's some economic development things that are in the tank that are going to cook. They're in the oven and going to cook. And over the next 3, 4, 5 years, you'll see some huge development projects on the river corridor. And it's going to be awesome for Angelo.
Well, I asked,
but those things take time. They can't happen overnight.
The city owns some land on the south side of the river, right there at Chadbourne or Oak Street. There's a bunch of ceramic tile in there. I guess it used to be a ceramic tile plant.
I have no idea.
Something like that.
You're going in the Wayback Machine way before me.
So I said, Mayor Gunner, will the city sell me that land? And I want to put a big metal building there and turn it into a live music venue, right? And she just laughed at me and goes, no, I don't think we're looking for metal buildings downtown.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, she's made an investment in her focus, and one of the things she's riding out on is the river stage.
Right.
All right. Developing the river stage. And her comments, not mine, her comments was the single most economic impactful thing we have in Angelo will be the river. All right. I argued with her. I said, I think it's the rodeo. And I mean, her and I banter back and forth, but there was a minimal investment in the river to make the river project potential, the river stage, all of these things, to make it one of those things that you can rent and lease out weekends. I'll agree. I don't remember who said it, but 115, 117 degree day on the river isn't the best place to hang out.
Right.
But in the fall and the spring and our winters, certainly make it a place you could go and just with minimal investment, you're going to make a pretty nice platform out there that people can rent and make money, have huge events. So the development of the corridor never needs to be ignored. And like we just had a cultural overlay, big discussion last council meeting. And we're trying to protect that. I mean, the overlay is all about protection against keeping things out of there that probably belong in other places in town.
Well, we've talked a long time.
No, we're just getting started.
Getting started. But you're running for mayor. The election is May 3rd.
May 3rd.
And early voting started today, which is April 22nd.
April 22nd. My brother's birthday. Happy birthday, Bill.
It runs through April 29th.
Right.
And you get down there and vote. Vote for against the Coliseum bond, vote for against the school bond, and vote for mayor. And if you're in one of these districts where you have the city council.
We kind of went down your path a little bit. I want to go a little bit down
mine.
We're
going to take this another 15 minutes?
You know what? You can edit any way you want to edit. But I was going to say, we're a thriving San Angelo.
Right.
We're fiscally responsible. We have not raised our city tax rate for the 10 years that I have sat there and watched it. We've kept driving it down. We've lived within our means. We're going to push economic development as hard as we can.
Okay.
Those guys need to, they need all the support they can to get some major scores. And then we need to protect what we have and stay focused on our infrastructure.
Well, stop right there.
We're going to focus on our infrastructure.
But talk about the economic development. How are you going to redo it? Right now, it seems like we don't have a guy, an executive director of Costa DC.
Right, but we share that expense with the city, with Michael Dane, and so they're not having to pay full price for a person.
Yeah,
I think
but
you just said Michael Dane was pretty good at what he does.
Good.
He is, and
but you don't have a full-time guy.
Right, but he's getting their full-time service with that, and they have that. We would love to get a full-time guy, but what we're doing in the interim is saving both the city and the chamber money.
Well,
and a lot of people won't bring that up.
John Osborne runs all the economic development, I guess, capsules in Lubbock. You know? He's got DMO, which is the Conventions and Tourism. He's got, I don't know if it's Market Lubbock or whatever. He's got the 8th cent sales tax.
Right.
Is what they have up there. But anything having to do with economic developments under the Lubbock Development Corporation under John Osborne, who's he's one of those guys that you need for a
What do you think he makes a year? What do you think he makes a year?
Probably 350,000
minimum. I bet he's closer to 5. If you went to replace him, it would cost you $400,000 to $450,000 to bring him in.
But they're building another loop around Lubbock now. I mean,
absolutely, that's part of I-27.
I don't think you can put. I don't think we could match the salary, but we could certainly find a visionary
Oh, and we've been
to run
looking.
that?
We've been looking, but for the time period now, Michael Dane is our best way to get to the next budget.
Okay.
All right. So the budget's done from October
Right.
1 to September 30th. There, if somebody came in and said we need 350,000, or we need something for this guy, number one, what does that do to the current people we already have? Which I
Yeah.
think are pretty talented.
They're all going to want higher pay.
Oh, they will. There's an adjustment, but I mean, if you look at it, you go to their website, they did $54 million worth of economic impact with 4 or 5 companies they brought the past few years.
Who did?
Chamber,
Chamber.
Economic Development,
Okay.
Looney, the two Mikes.
Right.
They've brought that. I mean, you can literally go.
And that's Michael Looney and Mike Berry.
Right, and people have thrown them under the bus at every forum and council. And
Have they really?
Oh yeah. Well, I'll just say they don't have any big scores. You can literally go to their website and see it's like, I think it's 54 million of economic impact they calculated to come in here in the past year. I don't think they do that sitting on their heels.
With all this money we got for Costa DC and everything, why do we just keep paying the chamber $262,500 a year since 2019? And you know all the inflation, and we hear the county budget and the city budget. All you hear about is inflation. We got to raise the salaries 10%, 5 to 10% for county employees, for city employees, but keeping them the same.
I would love to see everybody get within, but we can only afford what our tax revenue provides.
But
you're familiar with that. I mean, we're cut.
But this is half-cent sales tax revenue, and certainly the city has more because you have a. I mean, I'm getting in the weeds.
But then you'd have to rob it from water and take it over.
No, you wouldn't. The city has a $721 million city services contract with Costa DC. And part of that is $414,000 for salaries. You only have, of the 4 people, you only have 2 in there now. So you're saving money. Why don't you send that to the chamber?
I don't see a reason you can't look at that, but there's been reasons they've got an overpayment on one. I think was an air race was going to come in. There was a big overpayment on the air race. We didn't claw that back.
That was hot money, wasn't it?
I don't remember what it was.
I think it was hot money because that was Diane Bays and when she was the head of
Suzanne. Right. So there's basically 3 parts to the chamber and economic development, and all 3 of those are different. When you take half the sales tax, half the contract,
which is part of the problem. We don't have a unified economic development structure.
But that's a plan. I mean, we all have to sit down and say, okay, can we take all these pieces and put them into one pie?
You need to.
So we have one
however
pie.
However it looks. But right now we're
open to that.
We're doing this. We're doing this. We're doing that. And I don't think everything's getting done as efficiently or as forcefully as it could.
Well, I agree. Now, here's part 2 of that, and I hate giving you credit. I think you're sharper than the average person when it comes to the economic development and how those funds I mean, it's your job to know that really well and discuss that. I'll give that to you, but those are some hot buttons. There's some really hot buttons that, as I've gone out and got feedback for this campaign, permits are one of them. Economic development's another one.
So permits is affordable housing. You can take that back.
Well, it's affordable housing, but people talked about the permit department.
Right.
And they throw it under the bus.
Every year they complain about the permit department.
Right.
Why can't someone just fix it? I thought Brenda fixed it.
Well, they put in a program to track it. So if you go down there today, every permit that's been applied is within the guidelines and the time.
Right.
But sometimes you just go in there and look at. I had a person from a company I work for called me and said, hey, the city's holding up this permit. And actually researched it. No, we weren't. The contractor was doing it. And probably half of the ones I looked into, it's not on the city. That's the story that's being told, but there are other people do it. But if you look at it from a realtor and a developer and a citizen standpoint, the fewer trips you make to City Hall, the better. Mm-hmm. We've got to emphasize that. Folks, here's a hot button. Okay. I don't want to come down here 4 times.
So permit's a hot button. What's the other hot button?
Economic development's one. The Coliseum bond's another one. I think you always have to sit back and look at water. To me, that's a huge one. You can't ever forget that one. Well, I don't know. Have we exceeded our 15 minutes yet?
We're not going to be able to upload this thing to YouTube.
No, they won't. People go all that. But so what I appreciate is you give all of the candidates time to offer rebuttals and discussions.
Yeah. And that's important because when you're running for office and you can't get your point across.
Yeah, you got 2 minutes to say it, and somebody over here just said stuff that's wrong and illegal, and
so
it's
you
not
have to
even
use
possible.
your whole 2 minutes trying to rebut that.
Right.
And it's and you don't feel like you can get, and then your brain doesn't work in 2 minute cycles. And I don't think people in the audience of these forums appreciate it.
So I've done several forums, and I had one that I didn't like as good because I spent half my time trying to throw a rebuttal out for the previous comments made. And I was like, that's not right. That's inaccurate. You need to go look at the facts. But I think where I'm going to go with this is I was at a forum recently, and they asked our opinion on the bonds. And I said, I gave it first. It's God, family, city, and I'm in strongly support of both bonds because to me that's economic development. If you don't have, number one thing people ask about, water, housing, and schools when they look at bringing a company here.
Right.
I stood up and said that from the word go. Everybody else, other than Dudra, said, I'm not going to comment.
Butler, she's running for your spot.
Right. And said, I'm not going to answer that. And I thought, you know what? This is a hard job. You have to be able to speak up and say, this is important. It's never going to be easy. All right. And I think some people, if they don't have the guts to stand up and say, regardless of who's the mayor, who's decided to be the mayor in May or June, this is something we need to support as a city, as a town. We need to get behind it because we haven't. And this helps the city in the long term. We have some economic development that I think is going to make these bonds cost irrelevant in the next 2-3 years. But that's in the cooker, and we can't talk about that.
Right.
But I think as the mayor, you've got to make the hard decision. All right. This sitting here I'm sitting here. It's, my first 90 days, I don't need to go meet everybody. It's like, here's my 3 hot topics. Here's what people brought up. We have to work on these. All right. This is what's been discussed. This is what we have not done well. This is what we've not accomplished. Let's hit those. How do we solve them?
So should the mayor have an office in City Hall?
No.
Why not?
No. That is,
why not?
That city property, you can have a meeting down there all you want.
Yeah, they have a conference room on the fourth floor.
There's you can
Which by the way, do you ride the elevator or do you walk up the stairs?
I ride the elevator up because I'm usually late, and the elevator's faster than me running up 4 flights of stairs.
Oh, I always run up the stairs.
And coming down, I'll try to take the elevator or the stairs. It doesn't matter if you have time, but when I go up, I usually stop on all 4 floors.
But if you can make it to the 4th floor of the City Hall without losing your breath, you're in shape.
You're in shape. You work out quite a bit. So we've covered some key hot things, some key buttons. I briefly want to cover the 4 endorsements that I have.
Okay. Who's endorsed you?
The police department PAC. All right.
Okay.
SAPAC's the fire department.
Okay.
San Angelo Association of Realtors.
Okay.
And the Builders Association.
And those are the 4 big.
Those are the 4 biggest ones there, and we all had the same opportunities to go talk and visit with those people.
When you look at the fundraising for your campaign, and you came at a forum, you came under fire for being the object of the good old boy. But most of the money, I went and looked at it, most of the money is from the HBA and the realtors. And those are $10,000 spots.
It was that one that was 10, but the whole point is you can't help who supports you. People look at your platform and they go, "I want you to win, and here's my support for you." They all had the same opportunity to go talk to the same people.
Right.
I'm like, if that's the definition of being a good old boy, is somebody that wants to support you to move forward and they like your platform, I get that.
Do you have someone that's not a good old boy that supports you?
I have several, but you'll see it in my financial statement there.
The $50 guy?
Yeah, there's 50, hundreds. Every one of those important. They're just as important as your $500 to $2,000 investment. All right. Those are just because that's a vote of support.
Right.
And when you go and read that, you're going like, okay, those are some of the best minds and the best people that have created commercial investment in San Angelo. I think they call them good old boys. I call them great men. All right. Great women and great men that have given me funds.
Well, if they were given to your opponent, they wouldn't be.
Right. But the point of it is it's here's this funds. We want you to go win this election because we believe in what you're doing.
Right.
I'm like, okay.
All right, the election is May 5th.
No, it's 3rd.
Or May 3rd. I keep saying May 5th. You know why?
Cinco de Mayo?
That and my anniversary.
Awesome.
So maybe I'll get...
number one, thank you.
May 3rd.
May 3rd for letting us have this banter.
Right.
It's an open format. I'm sure some people are going to pull some things out of here, and God knows what they're doing. But this is what
look at the whole thing for context.
Yeah, look at the whole thing for context and realize anybody can have this discussion with me, not just you.
Right.
All right. It's open for anybody.
All right. Tom Thompson, running for mayor.
Thank you, Joe.
Back to you guys. Oh, man.
It's hard to believe how reckless some people can be and how hard they fight against real victims. You need a partner who consistently beats the giants and who will never, ever flinch.
We're going to keep weather short for you. San Angelo is in a severe thunderstorm watch from right now until 11 p.m. There's a 30% chance of storms that increases to 60% tonight, where the low is 61.
Then tomorrow through Friday, we have anywhere from 20 to 50% chance of rain and storms. Highs will be in the 80s and lows will be in the 60s.
On Wednesday and Thursday, those are our highest chances of storms. The wind gusts should not be too terrible. The rodeo's over, so I don't care about the weather at this point.
The wind supposedly shouldn't be too terrible, but...
Well, we know how that was about a month ago when Lubbock was blowing in, so...
Oh, yeah. We'll be right back after a quick word from Concho's Diamonds and Coins.
When it comes to unique pieces you can't find anywhere else, Concho's Diamonds and Coins is your one-stop shop. With over 24 years in the diamond and coin industry, Concho's Diamonds and Coins is West Texas's choice for diamonds, jewelry, coins, silver, and gold. Owner Bill Concho stands by his work and offers free consultations, including estate jewelry. Don't just trust anyone with your valuables. Come see the staff at Concho's at 1016 West Beauregard in San Angelo.
Thank you for watching the Live Daily News Show.
The only locally owned news show in the Concho Valley.
Go like us on Facebook, X, and other social media platforms.
And download the San Angelo Live mobile app.
For the live team, I'm James Bellini.
And I'm Tessa Koskovich.
And we'll see you tomorrow.